So hey guys, welcome to another Warframe video, and today I want to go over the 5, for the lack of a better word, things to take offense to the Sentient's existence with. These are in no particular order whatsoever, so some of them are going to be a little bit stronger, some of them are going to be a little bit weaker, but one thing's for sure, they are all great for destroying the Sentients. First things first though, a little bit of spicy information. So if you go into the codex, you will see that the vast majority of Sentients sport robotic health and ferrite armor. They generally don't have a lot of ferrite armor, but thanks to being there, we can actually take advantage of corrosive, which is highly effective against it. It's also why you don't necessarily want to strip away all the armor from Sentients, because then you lose the corrosive bonus and you have to rely on either electricity or radiation or just puncture. So what is straight up the best murder device to use against the Sentients? Well, the Parathesis, of course, a sword designed specifically to chop up Sentients. This comes from the Chimera Prologue quest, and it is very expensive. To build it, you're gonna need 5 Eidolon shards, 15 Orokin cells, a Galatine, and 1000 ducats. Plus, if you want to max out its sentient shredding capabilities, you're gonna have to put on 5 Forma onto it. Not necessarily for the build though, but mainly because the Parathesis, just like Kuva and Tenet weapons, gains additional ranks and thus capacity as you put more and more Forma onto it. However, unlike Kuva and Tenet weapons, the Parathesis also gets damage to Sentients, and if you get 5 Forma onto it, it will also reset Sentient damage resistance with every hit. Now for the build, you want to use as much crit and damage as possible, and you want to use both sacrificial mods, because on top of giving you their inherent stats, they also add damage to Sentients. Now you might be thinking, well, wouldn't it be better to go with the hybrid setup, Mr. YouTube man person? And the answer in this case is no. If you want to fight the Sentient, you want to go with a setup like this. It should theoretically be better to go with a hybrid setup at super duper high levels, but at 175, which is as high as my simulacrum will go, the crit setup wins. Now this is by far the fastest way to dispatch of Sentients. There is nothing else in the game, as far as I know, that would do it faster and more reliably. The Parathesis is just a really strong heavy blade, and the ability to reset the Sentient's damage adaptation with every hit is invaluable. So if you want straight up the strongest thing to dispatch the Sentients with, this is it. But what if you don't have the Parathesis and can't be arsed to farm it up and then put 5 Forma on it? What if you don't like it? Well, in that case, I would highly recommend you take Excalibur Umbra. You can get this frame from the Sacrifice quest, so you don't really have to do much there, and for me personally, he's like the second best thing to take against the Sentients. The build is pretty much just a quality setup with all positive stats. We're running all 3 Umbra mods because the Umbra comes with the polarities for them already, so they're very easy to fit in, and we're gonna run Steel Charge for the aura and then Chromatic Blade as our augment. I would also recommend you either don't cripple your range or get some additional range. In this case I'm running Stretch, and this is mainly for Radio Howl, which can reset Sentient damage adaptation. Also, here's the setup that I run for the Exalted Blade. We once again run both sacrificial mods for a ton of damage against Sentients, and then it's just a crit build with some extra attack speed from Gladiator Vice because it's just more fun that way. Also, for the Chromatic Blade augment, you want to go with either bluish or greenish emissary colors, because that way you're gonna get either electricity or toxin, which is gonna combine into corrosive and is not gonna do weird stuff with your heat. Now this is both better and worse than the Parathesis. It's better because you have a lot more range and a lot more AoE, but it's worse because the damage is not quite as good, though you can still happily carve through level 100 Sentients no problem, and you also don't have automatic reset on the damage adaptation. If you want to reset the adaptation on the Sentients, you will have to use your Radial Howl. The biggest plus for Excalibur Umbra when compared to the Parathesis is how much simpler it is to get. You just do the Sacrifice quest and that's it. You have Excalibur Umbra, he already has on the Umbra polarity, so the investment is not quite as crazy. Next on the menu we have Beru, which is very similar to Excalibur Umbra with the exception that he does not have a way to reset the Sentient damage adaptation. This is the setup that I personally like to run on Beru with Umbral Vitality and Intensify. You don't really need Umbral Fiber because armor doesn't do much, especially if you're running adaptation, and it's also running Reactive Storm, so it doesn't matter what kind of elements you have on your Desert Wind because it's gonna adapt to what the enemy is most weak to. And speaking about Desert Wind, here is my build. It once again has a ton of attack speed with Gladiator Vice and Berserker Fury because it's just fun. I'm also running Sacrificial Steel, and you can run Sacrificial Pressure as well if you can fit it in, but I'm also running Healing Return here, which on this build in particular just makes you straight up immortal. Now this build actually has a lot more damage than the Excalibur Umbra setup, which is why it doesn't really matter that we don't have an inherent way to reset the Sentient damage adaptation outside of jumping into Operator form and hitting them with an amp. It's also, thanks to Reactive Storm, far more versatile versatile than the Umbra setup because the damage will just adapt to whatever you are fighting, so you never have to change your setup and you can use it everywhere. Plus the AoE and cleave on Desert Wind is a lot better than on Exalted Blade. And finally, let's check out some shooty bang bangs as well, because so far we have a melee weapon and 2 frames. So let's check out some weapons, or rather a weapon and a bow. First up, we have the Kuva Choker. This one you get from a Kuva Lich, and long story short, it's basically Daiku but gun. This is one of the few slash weapons that actually does really well against sentients, even though it does pure impact and then it has one extra element based on the lich you take it from. The reason it's so strong is because it has high base damage, high crit, and it can take full advantage of internal bleeding, which I'm also combining with hunter munitions. Though one thing to bear in mind here is that the damage, while potentially great, is somewhat unreliable. Sometimes you just get a crappy slash proc from a yellow crit, and other times you just get 3 really juicy slash procs from a massive orange crit. It also has some splash, but the AoE is not great. So if you desire something more AoE focused, I would recommend the Proboscis Cernos instead. This one is available from the market, though to build it you will need a Mutalist Cernos, and for the Mutalist Cernos you will need a standard Cernos, so you need to start with that. And while it might not seem like the best weapon to fight the sentients with, it is really good when it comes to AoE. The build I personally like to run is this with Serration, Galvanized Chamber, Heavy Caliber, Vile Acceleration, Vigilante Armaments, and then Thermite Rounds, Malignant Force, and High Voltage with Vigilante Supplies in the Exiles. Now I'm not gonna lie, this one on its own doesn't have amazing damage against high level sentients, so around level 100, but it does just fine if you have a way to reset their damage adaptation. And that's pretty much it for the video, so I thank you very much for watching. As always guys, I hope you have enjoyed it and found it helpful. Let me know in the comment section down below what are your favorite items to fight the sentients with, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.